Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Trading Capital's daily live stream. So basically, today's an interesting session. Obviously, we've seen the S&P, the Qs, and the Russell gap up. So looking at the headwinds, tailwinds of the markets, headwinds right now, really not too much in terms of headwinds. So you have more tailwinds for the market. You have yields down, you have the VIX down, you have the dollar down, you have oil down. Really, the only headwind that I'm seeing is natural gas staging a little bit of another breakout attempt here, up 5.33%. So the market as of now actually has every ability to actually trend. I could see every sector today going green. If you start to see the communications firm up, I think this S&P and Nasdaq market is going to rip. I'm actually liking the consolidation here on the S&P 500. I think as long as we stay above this red bar high here, so that high is roughly around that 509.62. So I'd encourage you to actually mark that red bar high on the hourly chart of your SPY candle, 509.60. If we stay above that, I think you go long. If you fall below that, you go short this market. Really as simple as that. We're going to keep the strategy simple. Again, short below, long above if you're day trading today. Obviously, we've been kind of dipping a little bit a couple temps earlier on in the session below, but for the most part we've been holding around this 509.60. So look at that as your support and as your resistance if you start to break below. But as of now, again, I think that the market can bounce and likely continue to trend. You know, we are seeing pockets of strength with Tesla, and a few of the laggers are catching names in the S&P 500 like Boeing, Tesla. But you're also seeing some weakness, some sell-side pressure coming into Google, coming into Meta, so hitting those communication-based stocks. Obviously, NVIDIA, Microsoft, also down on the session. But then you have strength in Apple. Apple today up a whopping 3.27%. So this is one of the reasons why we always discussed with our members, and one of the big things we're kept hitting on each week is potentially going long Apple, short the NASDAQ. And, you know, whether it was short NVIDIA or short Microsoft, it's really a pairs trade that has actually worked out over the last little sessions here since Apple's really moved up off of the lows. Apple's into a big resistance trend line now. If it can get through this area, this downsloping trend line, then it does suggest that there's actually quite a bit more upside. Even Tesla, look at that massive gap up on the back of some positive news for Tesla in the Chinese market. Getting their approval for the FSD licensing. That's a big step for Tesla. A lot of people were just saying that there's no way Tesla's going to get it. You're going to get NIO, you're going to get XBEV, BYD, etc. They're going to be the car companies that get the licensing approval way before. But overall, you're looking at a market that wants to trend higher. Hey Bart, no, I was actually out of the SOXS a while. Are you talking about just a day trade? Is that what you're talking about? No, that was closed last week. If you're talking about the SOXS, that was closed last week. You know, semis are at an interesting spot. You know, if you look at the daily chart of the SOXX, obviously we still have a few semiconductor earnings to report. NVIDIA, the big one, which is in a few weeks. But you look at the SOXX, decent bounce. Now you're into your first little pivot point resistance as well as this red bar. So could you go a little bit higher to this 218.50 maybe? This little red bar. But in and around the zone is a really, really big resistance point for the semiconductors. But you've been seeing some strength. You saw some read-throughs from some of the picks and shovels of the semiconductor business do actually fairly well. So, I mean, at this point, obviously all eyes are going to be looking at some of the others like AMD, SMCI, still very, very important. I would say, you know, obviously they're kind of market leaders in their field, but they're more of a sentiment gauge for the market. You know, if you have AMD and SMCI do poorly, then that could impact the semiconductors in a negative way. Obviously, AMD is one that's had a nice decline from the highs, you know, from a high pivot all the way up to 227 here, down to a low of 146. It's almost a 100-point decline, getting back below that previous all-time high. Definitely an area where semiconductors have lessened the expectations heading into earnings. So there's always a scenario where these names could continue to pop. Obviously, NVIDIA, take a look at NVIDIA's chart. It's at a very, very interesting spot here. Obviously, everyone can see that NVIDIA is staging a potential breakout here again. And this could be a meaningful trend to the upside again if NVIDIA... What could happen here is NVIDIA could start to just press on continued hype and momentum into its earnings. And then you could see a bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news. So as we I think if NVIDIA breaks out here, it's going to trend into earnings on high expectations. You know, if it starts to fall, then I think earnings is probably a buy on any sort of weakness. But if it starts to trend in earnings, I think it's probably going to be a bit of a short into earnings. But at a breakout zone right now for NVIDIA, definitely a key zone. Key zone. I think what's important to recognize today is that the Russell 2000 is doing well. So small caps risk sentiment is definitely on. Take a look at that nice little daily chart breakout. Pivot high to pivot high. Nice breakout candle. Looking to see some continued move. The only thing that I'd caution you about with the Russell is that we're now into this little pivot zone. You can see that resistance. So it might need a little bit of backing and filling, especially since you've had a nice multi-hour rally into that resistance, a gap up rally in the pre-market. Obviously, the important thing that we'll discuss later on in the stream is the fact that you have a huge week ahead of ourselves. Quiet data throughout the rest of the week. Couple things tomorrow, but really it is Wednesday, the FOMC decision. Powell setting to come out and speak to the market. So we'll see what happens. I'm just going to go through some of these headlines, guys, on the markets here that I think is worth mentioning. Obviously, Tesla soaring on the approval for driving system in China. That's the big one. That is the really, really big one that is pushing things higher here in the near term for Tesla, gapping up tremendously in the price action. Let me just change my bit rate here. Again, we were able to close a couple trades today on the swing trade side with members. So before I do that, let me just... And you can see the QQQ chart looking fairly bullish, right? You have your inverse head and shoulders on the hourly chart here, which is triggered. Upside gives you this target of 446. When you look at that S&P 500 chart, you know, that also triggered a nice bullish pattern. That gives you upside to minimum 511, which we're almost into already. We're at 509.80. But really, when you look at the market, things are looking fairly strong. And if we get positive prints on Apple, NVIDIA, a few of the other larger companies set to report, Amazon as well, then this market could easily keep trending. If Powell comes out soft, then it could trend even more. I think that the CPI results will knock the market down. That's the likely scenario. But again, you still have some events that could push this market higher in the near term, which is why you just have to be careful with your shorts at this point, because we're kind of in a no man's land. You could have an easy boom, power surge off of positive earnings and a dovish Fed, but you could obviously also fall back down and test this little neckline on the Qs. So not really an area to go long just yet on swing trades. I think you need to wait, especially with the amount of data that is set to occur this week alone. Again, so some of the trades that I'll mention that we closed with members here at tradingcapital.ca. And again, if you haven't checked out my website, definitely give yourself some time to search this little URL. Check out my day trading, swing trading service. We go through pretty much the leading and lagging sectors every week. I provide a daily analysis video each and every day for my members. You get access to all of my swing trading and day trading alerts. And then a few other interesting things in between. Track insider buying and selling, mention the ones that are worth to note. But today we took a nice little win on Boeing. We rode some Boeing calls. BA, again, no one wanted it. Boeing jokes everywhere, across news headlines, across social media services, you know, whether it's Instagram memes, Twitter memes, TikTok memes. Boeing was the laugh of the town, right? No one wants Boeing. And that's a sentiment. When you typically see peak euphoria, you know, in the sense when it comes to do with stocks and you're just seeing countless jokes and this engine falling off and that meme, and the stock is just getting obliterated, that's typically a signal to buy. We went long Boeing. We're still holding common shares, and it's performed nicely over the last 3 sessions. Here you can see a beautiful little reversal on daily volume. Nice little weekly distribution doji holding support. And we closed our Boeing calls for just over 100% and still looking strong. Another stock we picked up with members was Biogen, BIIB. We actually are still riding half of the position, but we started accumulating down this low range. Average right now sitting at just above 200. That's psychological whole number. And look at this pop. Nice little 2-day pop. Boom, 8% in our pocket. And now we'll let this run. So, I mean, some nice little trades that we picked up. And I have mentioned these here on the live stream. So if you've joined with us, congrats. All right, so let's flip back to, we'll keep these 2 charts on watch, the QQQ and the S&P 500, the SPY ETF. Again, I do think the SPY is at an area and the Qs are at an area where we could actually see a bit of a trend continuation. Typically when Tesla's strong and Apple's strong, you'll start to see the other stocks firm up as well. Obviously, Nvidia and Microsoft are dampening the party, which is a little bit of a character change, right? They've been the strong horses, and now you're starting to see some potential relative outperformance in Apple and Tesla. And those have been some of the most beaten down S&P 500 stocks and NASDAQ stocks. And now you're starting them to maybe see some leadership and rotationary change out of Nvidia, out of Microsoft. Obviously, they're still very strong. They're going to get bids, but we're definitely seeing some rotation. Put that here, and actually we'll keep a track of the Russell. So we'll watch the QQQ up top, and we'll watch the Russell down below. Okay, and I'll scroll through some other charts later on the session, just once we review some of these articles and discuss some key points. No bad news on Boeing, our good news. Yep, exactly. That's right. So obviously Tesla's the big one, soaring on the FSD licensing in China. Yen sparks intervention, suspicious U-turn after 1990 low. So obviously the yen has been under pressure, collapsing pretty precipitously. Here. And I also want to go through the Fed Watch tool, guys. We'll discuss that. It's a little bit more macro insight, but it's good to look forth over the next 1 year of what the expectations are moving like. Again, a couple of the most loved stocks right now, I think I like heading into this next quarter. And 2 quarters is Intel and Adobe. INTC ADBE. Intel and Adobe. Key Insurer says Russia oil price cap increasingly unenforceable. Yep, that's to make sense. What's Bitcoin doing today? It's trading at about 62.8. Currently down in the session by 0.37%. So a little bit of weakness in the market. I think what I'm looking for today on the Qs is a close above that 20-day moving average. If you look at the daily chart of the QQQ, we're actually fluttering and fighting the 20-day moving average, which is sitting at 432.40. We actually pierced it by a decent margin today, but now we're back under it. So watch that 432.40. I'll actually mark it as a little bit of a resistance level. 432.4, just so we know that is the 20-day moving average. And we'll flip back to the 10-minute chart. And again, I think once you get above that on a daily basis, that signals a lot of market participants to probably go long again. All right, let's flip back to some of these headlines. Not really seeing too much. Let's look at FinViz. So Boeing looks to sell bonds. I find it interesting how typically when a company pushes to sell bonds like Boeing is doing right here, they're looking to issue around $8 billion of debt in as many as 6 parts. Its first bond sale since the plane maker reported a quarterly loss of $3.9 billion of cash burn. And then Moody's cut the rating. But okay, so this is a little bit of an example how this type of news and headline is bearish, right? You read this, it's bearish. When a company's issuing debt, selling bonds, that's bearish for price. Look what Boeing's doing today, though. It's ripping higher today on the up 3.21%, outperforming the entire market. So you have an event now, a news headline that was thrown out today, and that typically should push the stock lower, and the market's not really that strong today, but you have Boeing just absolutely ripping on it. So what that's telling me is that that's probably a little bit of a BS headline. Investors, traders aren't believing that. Or, secondly, maybe it is true, but that type of headline has already been priced in. So it's just forced a lot of late day sellers and people to be reactive and dump their stock off of that headline. And now look, they're just absolutely accumulating this name in full force. Institutions, hedge funds, and it's pumping. I mean, when you're getting a back test of this key little wedge pattern, a little bit of a falling wedge pattern off of a 618 retrace, that's a bit of a buy signal in my opinion. Huge long-term support. Boeing could easily retest 200 whole number. But I mean, when you start to see a company diverging where it has strong price action mixed with absolutely negative headlines, that's telling us that probably a very strong bottom in the near term is in this name. Okay, so that's where the news is diverging from the actual price. Bit of a positive divergence in Boeing's favor. Let's just keep scrolling through here. What else is on the news? Tom saying, glad I missed the BA alert. Managed to close at 120, but my Tesla is inflicting max pain. Got to be done with earnings and iron condors. Yeah, iron condors are tough sometimes on earnings. I've seen them work out, but I've also, earnings are tough no matter which way you play them. Maybe I'll just inverse you, Tom. Send me your plays and I'll just do the opposite of you for earnings. Since the market seems to be on a mess with Tom. Rolled put spread to 160. Okay. Interesting. Tesla's at 190, 192. Sorry, 192. Just ripping here. Ripping on Tesla into the 190s now. That's quite astonishing. Phillips to pay 1.1 billion settle respiratory case. That's pretty bearish. Again, the yen, Boeing, Saudi Arabia. So I think this market is staging for a bit of a trend day into FOMC. And honestly, I think then you could actually maybe see some sort of a huge overzealous gap up and push up on FOMC and then a reversal. So markets typically love to get themselves into extreme positions heading into major news-based events like FOMC. So I would not be shocked if we keep trending throughout the session. The S&P right now is slightly green. Russell's the strongest. Qs are lagging, but still okay. Still a lot of weakness in this market through communication stocks, Google, Meta, Obviously still showing some weakness, Nvidia, Microsoft, but with Apple and Tesla staging this sort of rally, I mean, it's hard to, it makes me think this market will firm up even more. Tesla's just a monster today. Just starting to rip. 192.45. But look at the resistance you're now hitting in Tesla. Honestly, I think this could be a decent area to short. I really do. As a starter, potential day trade. Maybe it's a little bit overzealous getting into it now. But let's see this Tesla chart. You know, if you do a fibs retrace from that high to this low, maybe you go a bit higher actually to your 202 zone. Let me see if I pull this forward to that high pivot. Again, yeah, you could probably push a little bit higher, but that EMA will be strong resistance. You know, maybe you push up there today. I think for a day trade, if we push up to this EMA, which is right now at 193.66, I'm just going to mark that in. I think that's a little bit of a day trade scalp short. I wouldn't chase Tesla long here, but I think into this zone, this 193.66 zone, is a bit of a scalp short on Tesla. So I'll watch that because I am interested in potentially a short in that name. Again, even if you get through that, you have this little backup pivot, which is sitting right there, just slightly above it at 194.10. So you have a little bit of resistance in this range that Tesla is approaching. So I'm going to look for a potential short in this range. It's risky, but I think that we can be a little bit nimble and potentially pick it in this range. Okay, guys? Anti-Tom ETF, exactly. Hassan saying, can you please analyze GE chart? What is the major resistance? Just give me a second, Hassan. We're going to get into a Tesla trade here on the short side. Guys, I'm going to start a position right here at this 193.66. So get ready on this Tesla trade, guys. 193.66 gets me interested. But basically in this 193.66 to 194.10 is where I'm going to start a position short on Tesla. This is a high risk trade. I'm going to go in with 4 entries. 4 entries. So first one is in this range. I'll call it out. But 193.66 is really good. And then basically I'll add every 80 cents to a dollar. I'll add again to the trade. Okay. You can see Tesla is pulling back here a touch. Guys, we're seeing a little bit of a breakdown here in the Qs. Tesla never hit our level, but this was the decline and pullback we were looking into. So this trade is now off of the table because it never hit our level. It missed us by about, 30 cents or so, which is kind of frustrating, but that's just how she goes sometimes. And we'll just reassess. If for some reason it holds this impulse green candle and pushes higher here into now the 190, the higher 194 areas, I'll look for the short trade, but I don't like it at the EMA anymore. I'd let it pierce that area before I would consider another potential short. You do have the QQQ trying to stage a bit of a breakdown here, hitting some support. If it breaks this area, I think we retest 429.60 on the chart here. And again, the weakness is now being observed from Nvidia. Microsoft's still coming in. Apple's now also starting to curl down a touch. Meta's selling really hard. And then of course Google. Google's at pretty much the lows of the session, coming down nicely. I'll take a look at that GE chart in a second. Chris is saying FYI Passover holiday is over tomorrow at sundown. Fully expect some retaliation and turmoil. Market will be spooked. Oh, that's a good observation, Chris. Thank you, thank you. So I mean, obviously tensions in the Middle East maybe have been subdued over the last little bit due to Passover. So you're saying your theory is that it could start to uptick again here. What's interesting is you have the VIX getting clobbered, right? If you look at that UVXY, there's really been no sort of it's just been a sell side day, right? Look at that complete disgusting move down. I mean, VIX is actually at an interesting spot here from my technical perspective, because look what you're trying to breach today. This is your previous little gap here, big bullish gap up, then you got faded, but now you're coming right back into this low impulse green candle reversal. I mean, and just take a look at that reversal that happened intraday. You know, that was a 16% spike in the VIX out of nowhere, just in one day. So I mean, you're right back testing that pivot. Obviously, it is an area of intermediate support, which could stage a bounce. You are seeing it pierce today, and you saw a high volume reversal on the 10-minute chart coming off that zone with a nice bullish engulfing continuation. So there's a scenario where, yeah, the VIX could spike here. Buying some downside protection is probably not a bad scenario. That's for sure. There's even this little low on the weekly. So if you use the weekly support, it could still flush to about 31, but definitely had some daily chart support on the VIX here. And it is getting a nice little surge in buying pressure late into the candle here. Nice little bounce off that level. So that's an interesting observation. Thanks for those thoughts there, Chris. It kind of makes a lot of sense in my mind. That could actually be a very plausible scenario. Very, very plausible. Obviously, tomorrow we'd have Amazon earnings. So Amazon earnings are tomorrow. In terms of earnings after the bell, let's just take a quick peek. Tesla's still managing to hold on to the majority of its gains here. So I mean, really after the bell, you have NXPI, so NXP Semiconductors, market cap about 61 billion. Welltower, it's important for the real estate. SBAC, MicroStrategy, Everest, Yum China, Paramount. So there's some interesting names. F5. There might be some gap down, gap up opportunities tomorrow. SoFi was this morning. How did SoFi do this morning, guys? I actually didn't even check that ticker out. Wow. Bludgeoned. Down 10.67%. I remember seeing this across FinTwit everywhere. Bullish SoFi, bullish SoFi, bullish SoFi. It's not looking that bullish to me, especially with a 10% gap down on earnings. at the low of its bear flag range here, looking like it probably wants to trigger this little bit of a breakdown. You lose this trend line on SoFi, I mean, it's going right back down to this little gap fill all the way back from May of 2023 spike. So not looking like a healthy chart on SoFi at the moment, especially if you lose this area. Could easily fall, you know, down to about $3 on the chart. Looking for that. That's a small company that reported earlier. Really the big one is going to be NXPI. Let's look at that name. See if it's right now the chart is looking obviously positive, heading right into earnings at resistance. Take a look at that, trying to break out. I'm always suspicious of companies whenever they're trying to break out ahead of earnings. It makes me think that people are just trying to front run, getting roped in on the long side, and then they gap it down. I've seen this play happen a lot where strong charts that are technically breaking out get whacked off of a fundamental news. I mean, and if you get whacked off of this name, what's impressive is this is creating either a really big bullish breakout on NXPI, or I mean, this could be starting a vicious head and shoulders. Imagine this is a gap down today on earnings, and you trigger this head and shoulders on NXPI. Again, I have no bias going into it, but just a little bit skeptical of the fact that we're trying to break out right on earnings. I never like that chart setup. I either like charts to be extremely oversold into earnings, which lessens the expectations, or extremely overbought into earnings. Tesla spiking up. Yeah, Tesla's still continuing. A lot of momentum. Oh, let's see if we have a short trigger on Tesla. Yeah, it's hitting that resistance. Let's go. Let it go a little bit higher. Because it had that mini pullback there, we want to give it a little bit more room to run. Above 190, I mean, you hit about 194.10. That was an area where I liked it. But because the fact that we had a little micro pullback here, I think we give it a touch more little room to run. Just a touch more room. Because I want a little bit more room for it to go higher, and then we can get a bigger pullback into this previous high pivot range. So it is at a short range right now, but you have it's a strong stock bouncing. QQQ also trying to bounce to support. So really the Qs don't hit resistance until you hit this little upper wedge pattern. So we're almost there on Tesla. A little bit higher. I want to see a 3-bar surge on Tesla, and then I'd get interested on a short side, guys. So be ready. Be ready. I do like it above this 194 zone, but I'm just waiting a little bit more. And we're going to accumulate in 4 lots, about 80 to $1 higher every single entry. You can see the Qs are trying to attempt a little bit of a breakout here. QQQ resistance is this pivot that we're hitting. That's what we got rejected off today. Guys, anything above 194.50 on Tesla I like. 194.50 or higher, I will be executing a trade on the short side. Okay, 194.50. 194.50, we're almost there. Oh, look at that. They're trying to pull it wicked back on us. The high of that candle was 194. Oh, there it is, guys. There it is. There's the wick through. I just got filled on the short side. This is a 1/4 entry on Tesla, guys. 194.50. 194.50. 1/4 entry on the short side of TSLA. So again, next ad level is basically $1 to 80 cents. Actually, I'll do 195.30. You know what? For this trade, I'm actually going to do it in every 50-cent increments. I'll add to the position. So 195. Just to keep it easier, 195.50 still works in the parameters. Google trying to get a little bit of a bounce as well. Tesla ripping through that 194.50 resistance, but coming in sharply now. Yep, Tesla spiking up a little bit, but again, it's super extended. We've put in this huge bearish divergence. Up 15%. You'll see some sellers. You'll see some sellers in this name. Look at that decline, guys. Alright, guys, I'm all out of Tesla. I just covered it at the low there, 193.75. I'm all out, guys. 193. That was the dip. That was the dip. That came out of nowhere. This is likely going to go a little bit lower. That was the nice flush, guys. That was a good flush on Tesla. That's exactly what we were looking for. A quick 1 minute flush on that name. Netting us just over 80-cent target that we've been discussing. Huge. If we push back up, I'm going to look for a re-entry right off this 194.50 zone again. I'll look for a re-entry right off 194.50 again. So we tap that zone. I will look to re-enter again. Alright, guys, I'm back in again, 194.50. A straight little tap of that zone. I'm back in again. Same thing, 1/4 position. I'm looking for anything between 80 cents to $1 in profit target. I still think that there's a chance Tesla can actually retest. There's this little bit of a channel that I'm watching now. There's this upsloping channel we're into. I think Tesla can hit the low of that channel again, if not even lower. So anyone that had missed the first trade, we're back in it again. Bart saying Aurora falling heavy, ACB. Yeah, can it be down 8? Aurora down sharply. Definitely. Again, this is what wheat stocks do, right? They have impulse breakouts and then they just get sold into. So, I mean, it's one that... it's names that they look like they're breaking out and then they just take you down and beat you. Alright, Tesla's coming up into the next ad level. Tesla's coming up 195, 195.50, and then 196, guys. So we have our 3 upward targets. Again, you're seeing a lot of like whippy, snippy price action here, telling us that there are some sellers. Again, you're into that heavy EMA 113. Microsoft still looking rather weak. Google trying to bounce here. Meta still curling down. Nvidia trying to bounce. QQQ trying to hold steady here as well and bounce. Bitcoin recapturing 63,000. Amazon finding a little bit of buyers in this range. Tesla still trying to push. Alright, guys, next ad level's coming up here, 195. I'll let you know if I get filled. No fill yet. We just kissed it. Nat gas continuing to spike here. It's up 6.15%, crossing over the 207 whole number. QQQ could be shaping up for a bit of a head and shoulders here. All right, guys, I just added to Tesla there at 195.06. We are spiking 195.06. My average is 194.80. Next entry is coming up a little bit more. Seeing the S&P trying to spike. All right, guys, heavy volume coming into Tesla again. Just got hit on our third entry, 195.50. Average now is sitting at 195.11. That's a 3/4 position short on Tesla, guys. 3/4. Final entries at 196. Final entries at 196. Again, target on this is 80 cents to $1 per share, okay? 80 cents to $1. Still continuing to push. Tesla's well above that EMA. Nvidia curling back down, so is Meta, Apple trying to push up, Microsoft trying to hold that 400 number, 400 level. Come on, Tesla, give it up. Again, we're short Tesla, 3/4. Final entry is going to be at 196. We are seeing it squeeze up higher here. Nice little run that it's been on. You look at this 10-minute chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 consecutive 10-minute candles off of a bearish overbought divergence intraday. Obviously, it's a strong stock. All right, guys, final entry coming up here at 196 on Tesla. 196. And then we'll have a full position. Alright, guys, it just got filled 196.03. Tesla's still continuing. My average is 195.58 on the short side. I will not add to the position anymore. 195.58 on the short side. Guys, my risk on this position is $1 full. 196.68 is my stop. But we are starting to see Tesla come in. It tried breaking out of this little bit of a channel. But it is starting to see a little bit of minor selling. Again, if the Qs start to firm up, that could help Tesla. But I still think Tesla's going to retest at least this 194 zone. Bitcoin's still trying to make a move higher. The highest volume shares traded today are Tesla, 125 million shares, and it's only 12 o'clock. That's insane. The volume on Tesla today is insane, guys. 125 million shares, and we're only at noon. That's incredible. That's quite incredible. Which means that there's a lot of money to be made here today on Tesla, just scalping back and forth. the trend is up, but it's extended. Whenever you see this much volume in a name that's in a mega cap that's already had an astonishing move to the upside in one day, plus it had an astonishing move on earnings, a big sell side day could come into play. I mean, just look at how Tesla's moved in really off of that earnings bottom. I mean, obviously this is such an oversold company, but look at the volume that was traded down here. Do you think that all these people are going to be holding? There's going to be obviously long-term bulls that accumulate, but just in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, Tesla's gone up 40%. Millionaires were made. Millionaires were made. Like, imagine you, wow. It's just astonishing. Astonishing price action. And again, you have names like Apple and Tesla bottoming, and look where the S&P and the Qs are. So imagine if these names start to push up, and then you also have continued strength. It doesn't have to be outperformance by Nvidia, Microsoft, so on like the others, but imagine you still have somewhat strength in these names. You know, the Qs could definitely keep pushing. Definitely keep pushing. All right, Tesla, we're in the green by about 10 cents, just teetering between flat and in the green here. Again, we're short off the 195.58 area on TSLA. Going from green to red, just teetering back and forth. High TC, thoughts on Cocoa? I wouldn't touch Cocoa on the long side. It's had an astounding move. Actually, I haven't looked at it in a couple days, so whether or not this chart, last time I checked it, it was just parabolic. Maybe it's fallen here. Let's see. Okay, so it's had a really decent decline from the highs, Cocoa chart. Yeah, it still had a really decent decline. Now, this is the first pullback in really a massive uptrending move. So, obviously, if you hit the 50-day, there's going to be some support there, especially if you flush into it in quick succession. But I wouldn't go long this name yet. You know, I mean, let's look at Hershey. That's interesting. But if you're looking to just play the Cocoa chart, I mean, jeez, what a run that had. That had a 202% run from January low. That's insane. That's truly incredible. That's quite incredible. But I mean, Cocoa, you can see it's backtesting the 382 fib level. There's definitely some support there. Definitely some support there. But I would honestly, it's a tough chart to buy because, I mean, there's no real consolidation. It was just a vertical trend to the upside. So you could easily slice through resistance with extreme, but there should be some support at the major moving averages, the 50, the 100, the 200. And then just try to isolate some fib levels. And I mean, I don't really see any trend lines going back, so it's tough. It's really just going to be candle signals intraday, whether something forms a bottom. You know, bottoming tails gives you that reversal signal. Like, for instance, this hardcore sell-off right into that fib level. You're getting a 10-minute bottoming candle on volume. So, I mean, you're going to have to look for intraday signals for this one because it's really hasn't established any consolidation ranges. It's just been a parabolic move. So it's a tough trade. I'm not going to be looking at it on the long side yet. I need to see it go lower, at least probably to 72, the 618, but that's not a guarantee that I would enter there. All right, let's look at the QQQ. Tesla is trying to push back up, but definitely seeing some sellers in this range. The reason why it had another spike higher is the Qs are trying to break out. Alright guys, let's just keep a tight leash on this Tesla trade. Again, my risk is 196.81. We are seeing the QQQ break out. So again, this is supportive of Tesla pushing. Although it's extended, Tesla was grinding higher as the market was going through a consolidation phase. So if we see excess liquidity come back into the Qs, it could spike Tesla even higher here, which is why it's a dangerous short, which is why I'm just risking about $1 per share on the trade at this point. Okay, so 196.81 on a 1 minute close is my stop. 196.81. Until that gets breached, I'm short at 195.58. In terms of the target that I'm looking, again, anything between 80 cents to $1 on Tesla, I think is a reasonable target. 80 cents to $1. Let me just do a little bit of math here on the side, just to see what move we've actually done. I mean, a simple retrace of this entire up move today takes you back down to about 189, 190. And honestly, with Nvidia and Microsoft weak, I don't even care about Apple's strength right now and Tesla's. Makes me want to just fade the Qs with some puts. I'm seeing them two shaping up. Meta as well. Whenever you look at, so right now Nvidia, Meta, Microsoft, the reason why they're so important to the market, and arguably Meta, those three combos of stocks, Meta, Microsoft, and Nvidia, are more important than anything, is because Nvidia has such a heavy weighting in the semiconductor ETFs. It skews the SMH, it skews the SOX, it skews the XLK. Microsoft, its weighting in the XLK is completely skewed to an extreme. Then you have Meta. Meta's stock in the communications ETF is so skewed. We're talking about 20% weighting from Microsoft, 20% weighting from Meta. So when those stocks are seeing sell-side pressure, they inherently have a little bit more of a sentiment impact on other stocks, being the fact that XLC is so weighted in Meta, it starts to drag down all the other communications components in that XLC ETF just because of ETF flows alone and weightings alone. So it's always important to understand what stocks are selling, what stocks are rallying, and how they're impacting ETFs. ETF structure is extremely important to our market because that's how most passive investors just pile in. They buy ETFs. Qs look like they're trying to trend here, guys, so let's just, again, be careful with this Tesla. We may get caught offside here. We may lose on this trade, but at the moment it hasn't hit our stop loss, which we're going to abide by. Big decline on Tesla, guys. That's what we're looking for. Look at this move down on Tesla. I still think that there's more. I'm still riding short, although you're getting a huge buy the dip bounce there. That was the decline we're looking for. I'm still looking for a little bit more, though, guys. I'm still in again. Anything between 80 cents to $1 on Tesla, I think, is reasonable. Again, that was a nice dollar drop, so we could have taken profits, but it just happened so quickly. But again, I like a move down to 194 as a better target. I think we could see that, but this is what happens when a name is so extremely overextended intraday, as well as on the daily, hourly, 4-hour chart. You get these big all of a sudden moves. You get big rallies, but you get hard candle downs, which typically can result in more price action or lower price action, which is why I'm shorting it here. Continue to stick with the trade, even though the Qs are looking rather firm here in this range. And again, you start to see distribution in the leaders. What I want to see is, okay, if Tesla's been strong all day, if Tesla goes through a little bit of sell side pressure, do names like Microsoft, Google, Meta, Nvidia, who have seen weakness pretty much all day, do they start to firm up? You know, I'm looking for, is capital just fleeing the NASDAQ and S&P 500 market, or is it rotating? So at the moment, it looks like it could be rotating, at least intraday. That's another important metric. You want to look to see if you can spot whether capital is just rotating from one mega cap to another, or is it leaving the entire market completely in the near term. Obviously, with the Qs floating up, it seems to be just rotating. Rotating looks like it's coming back into Nvidia, Amazon, Google catching a bid. But let's see if we get another hard bar down on Tesla, guys. We should. We should. After a nice candle like that. But the problem is the Qs right now are still remaining quite firm on the session. Microsoft down 1.32, Nvidia down 0.89, AMD SMCI green, Tesla up 16, NatGas up 6.3, ARM down, Meta negative by 2.8, Google down by 2.6, SunPower up 9, EQT up 1, Lululemon slightly negative, Walgreens up 0.5%, Aurora Canopy getting clapped, oil down by about 0.78%, Apple's up 3.1%, Roku catching a nice bid tip, 3.5%, Adobe up 0.2%, Baba's up 0.73%, Netflix slightly negative, AMC getting crushed down 9.97%, Intel's down 1.24%. In terms of sector performance today, you're seeing that both Dow components strong, retail's slightly green, regionals are slightly negative, materials up 0.7%, communications down 0.85%, energy, financials, industrials, XLK all green on the session, staples slightly negative, real estate up by 0.91%, utilities are up by 1.3%. That's the second best performing sector. That's where we've actually been bullish on. Healthcare up 0.4%, XLY, which is Tesla Amazon sector, up 2.21%. What's really astonishing is you have the XLY, consumer discretionary sector, performing the best today, which is obviously Tesla from Tesla's strength. But you have Amazon really just struggling today, only up 0.19%, actually underperforming the S&P and the Qs, and XLY. Boeing up 3%. Boeing's just a monster today. That was a nice little trade that we took on Boeing. So good job on Boeing, anyone that caught that with us. Alright guys, we're starting to see the Qs maybe trying to come down a bit here. Let's see if we can get a back test to this lower 431 zone. Tesla's obviously still at the highs. Saw a little bit of a pullback on volume, but now we're just grinding higher. So you're still seeing a constant accumulation in this range at this point, but again, the market has had a nice little bounce off the lows, and I still think we could see some downward pressure, although it is still looking strong at the moment and trying to press higher here in the near term. Tesla's continuing to grind. It's now hitting my stop. It is hitting my stop loss level, and I may get stopped out of this trade for a loss. We'll know our fate in about 10 seconds or so. If it closes above this 196.81, I'm going to look to probably take a loss off this trade. We are seeing heavy volume in this range. I'm still in, guys. I'm still in. But I'm on the precipice of hitting that sell button. Just want to see how we react now off this candle. But 196.81 on a 1 minute close is the stop, which we actually hit. But we haven't confirmed it, and it wasn't really that strong of a close. So I'm still holding, but again, very close to stopping out of Tesla for a loss here. Still holding, still holding, still holding. No confirmed break above that area. And also one of the reasons I'm holding a little bit longer here is if you go to your 2 minute chart, you're still inside of this heavy wide range red bar candle. A little bit of a move and an attempt at breaking out above that, but you can see rejection is being observed right now. So I'm still in this 195.58 short on Tesla. We're just keeping a fine leash on it for the time being. FCG, beautiful chart for a long trade, light volume for me, but just a nice longer term play. FCG, let's look at FCG. Yeah, it definitely looks like it's trying to break out here. Breakout one. Yeah, it looks strong. Looks strong for sure. Alright guys, so still holding this short. Again, we're inside of this little 2 minute bar down with a topping tail on volume. Tesla's obviously trying to eat through it because the Qs are still strong. But I am prepared to take a loss on this trade. Tesla's trying to get above this little bit of a reversal bar. Let's put that pivot in. Still inside this little 2 minute topping tail. At the moment, we're seeing Nvidia making a nice little surge, Apple curling down, Google curling down, Meta curling down, Amazon under pressure, Bitcoin trying to hold 63. Still in this Tesla short, guys, but on the near-term precipice of stopping out for a loss, especially if it can get above this little bit of a topping tail on the 2-minute chart of Tesla. And again, this is where it's a bit of an art and science. You know, you have to sometimes abide by your stops, but then you can adjust it intraday based off of candle formation. And again, from what I'm seeing here is this 2-minute red bar down. You've had your grind up, tried breaking out on this candle, rejected off of a little 2-minute topping tail on volume, and you really haven't confirmed above that area. So this is the only reason I'm still hanging on to this short trade, because it's almost like they're just distributing here, kind of getting people to buy in this range, and then they may dump it lower. I could be wrong though. As of now, you can see the big push that is occurring. It's in having another attempt at a breakout here again, but still inside this little topping tail. Qs are obviously supporting higher price at the moment. But the Qs are looking strong. That gas continuing to grind. Tesla is trying to establish a little bit of a bull flag potential. Google curling down, Microsoft pushing up, Nvidia pushing up. QQQ is now above its 20-day moving average. That's a nice bullish sign. That's a really bullish sign for the Qs. You can see Tesla's holding above this high pivot candle as of now. There's 40 seconds left in this candle. QQQ still trying to move. Pretty impressive move, eh? Everyone now on Tesla's looking for this gap fill. 202, that also happens to be a psychological whole number, but again, I'm even potentially going to hold this day trade overnight short of Tesla. I like this 195.58. I think we're still going to get a pullback to this EMA. I think that that's a likely scenario. Guys, I'm going to hold this name overnight, this Tesla position. I'm going to hold it overnight. So I'm not going to stop out. I'm going to hold it. Unless we get some sort of a big dip back down to this. Okay, I'm going to set the parameters here. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. If we get a dip today back down to this 190 zone, I'll take profits on the trade. Okay? Tesla's still phenomenally strong at the moment. No real pullback yet. QQQ still trying to push up here, now trading at 432.64, up on the session 0.38%. Nat gas still strong. Oil's trying to catch a bit off of its 7-day, trying to recapture 82.68. Intel's trying to carve out a bottom here. Guys, I'll be right back. So nice little decline into the indices here. We're seeing Tesla pull back to our break even. I still think that there's more downside to this name, although there is a bounce area here where Tesla can bounce, create a bit of a potential right shoulder, and then maybe watch for a downside trigger. But again, I'm looking for a profit target down here around 191.50, 191.57, 191.60. And basically, if it doesn't hit that today, I'm probably going to swing this overnight. Okay? But as soon as we hit this downside target down here, this first fib level, I will be closing the trade. So looking for about a 2% move down on Tesla. That would still put it up on the session about 13.9%. Alright guys, QQQ coming in as we speak. Look for this trend line to hold. If it doesn't hold, you have a potential little head and shoulders trigger that could occur. Takes you down to about 429.50-ish. Alright guys, I'll be right back.